Hey, welcome to Mr. Rockenstein's Flip Classroom, and today's lesson, which is on decimal subtraction. For this lesson, there are two goals. The first goal is that you will be able to subtract decimal numbers, and the second goal, you will be able to explain why you must line up the decimals when subtracting decimal numbers. So to start right in on that first goal of being able to subtract decimal numbers, we have 3 steps for subtracting decimals. The first step is to line up the decimal points. Second step is to subtract. And the third step is to drop down the decimal point in your answer. Now some of you might be thinking to yourself, hey, these steps look a lot like the steps for decimal addition. Some of you may have watched that video. Well, you're right. The only difference is step number 2. Instead of adding there, you subtract. Otherwise, the steps are exactly the same. Alright, so let's follow these 3 steps. Line up the decimal point, subtract, and drop down the decimal point on this problem right here. So I'm going to draw a line just to separate my problem and keep going down below. So I'll start with 9 7/10. And then this is the first trick. To start writing my second number, I'm going to write the decimal point first. Then I'm going to take a look at what's to the left of the decimal point. And in the ones place, there's a 2. So in the ones place, I'll put a 2. Then I'm going to look at what's to the left of the decimal point. And it's 13/100. So I'm going to write that in right here. Then there's this open space above the 3/100, and I'm going to fill that in with a 0. And the reason I do that is so that I remember that I have to subtract this 3 from something. I can't just put down a 3 because I have to take the 3 away from something. And in this case, 9 7/10 doesn't have anything in the hundredths place, so I put a 0. So then I'm on to my second step, which is to subtract. And to start, I'm going to have to borrow because I can't take 3 away from 0. So I'll take it from over here. And I'll make that a 6, and I'll make this a 10. 10 take away 3 is 7. 6 take away 1 is 5. 9 take away 2 is 7. And then my last step is to drop down the decimal point, so I'll do that right here. Now the last thing I need to do is I always need, with any problem, to check and see if my answer makes sense. So I'm going to go back up to the top and look at 9.7. I'm going to just kind of in my head round that to 10. And then 2.13, I'm going to round that to just 2. So 10 take away 2 would be 8. So I'm going to look at my answer and think, is this close to 8? 7 57/100? Yes, that's close to 8, so my answer makes sense. Here's another example problem, and I want you to work this example problem on your own. So pause the video right now and try it out on your own, and then you can start the video again and we'll compare our answers. Okay, so you've had a chance to work the problem on your own. Now let's compare. I'm going to draw a quick line right here just to separate the number sentence from my problem. And I'm going to start with 4.82. And then I'm going to take that decimal point from the other number and start with it right there. And I'm going to put in the tenths place, hundredths place, and thousandths place. Now I'm going to put in a 0 up here to help me out so that I remember I have to subtract. And then I'm going to put a 0 in here to help me out too. Subtraction symbol, line, and we are ready to do our subtracting. So 0 take away 5, can't do it. So I'll cross it out and borrow from over here. This becomes a 1, this becomes 10. 10 take away 5 is 5. Now 1 take away 5, can't do it. So let's cross that out, borrow. This becomes a 7. This will become 11. 11 take away 5 is 6. 7 take away 3 is 4. 4 take away nothing is 4. Then, last step, drop down the decimal point, put it in right there. And I get 4 and 465 thousandths. Now I'm going to look at my answer, and I'm going to compare it to the original number sentence and see if it makes sense. If I take something that's about, if I rounded it, is, like about 5, and I take away something that's less than 1, let's say about 0.4, then would I get something that's a little less than 5? Yeah, so this makes sense. Alright, let's move on. Here's another example problem for you to try. So when you're ready, you can pause the video, try this one out. I've taken away the steps from the screen, but you still need to follow them. So make sure that you're lining up the decimals, subtracting, and then dropping down the decimal point. Then start the video back up again, and let's compare. Booyah! You're ready to go. Alright, so I'm going to start by lining up those decimal points. I'll put this line just to separate the problems. 17 and 8/10. Take away. I'm going to put that decimal point in first. 9 and 1/100th. Really important. I'm going to put the 0 in here so I know that there's something that I have to subtract. And that means I'm going to have to borrow because I can't take 1 away from 0 without using negative numbers, which we're not doing. So then this becomes a 7, this becomes a 10. 10 take away 1 is 9. 7 take away nothing is 7. 7 take away 9, can't do it, so we're going to borrow. That's a 0 now. This becomes a 17. 17 take away 9 is 8. I'm ready for the last step. I bring that decimal point right down, and I have 8 and 79/100ths. Last step, does this answer make sense? Most important thing. So I go back up to the top and I say, hey, this number is about 18. If I take about 9 away from it, I should get something close to 9. 8 and 79/100ths is close to 9. So bingo, bango, I got it. So we've taken pretty good care of meeting that first learning goal, which was to subtract decimal numbers. Now let's take a look at the second learning goal by answering this question. Why do we have to line up the decimal points when we subtract decimal numbers? And I want to use this problem to show you why you have to line up the decimal points. So if I were to line this subtraction problem up the way you learned how to line them up for whole numbers, it would look like this. 41 and 7/10 on top, and then 3 and 12/100ths here, subtraction symbol and a line. And if you started subtracting the way you learned to subtract whole numbers, you just take 7, take away 2 is 5. The problem with doing that is I've just taken 7/10 and taken 2/100ths, because the 2 is in the hundredth place, away from it. And if I were to really do that problem, this is what I would get. This is 7/10, which is the same as 0.7. And this is 2/100ths, which is the same as 0.02. So I would have to put my 0 up here and subtract, and then I'd have to borrow. That would become a 6. This would become a 10. 10 take away 2 is 8. 6 take away nothing is 6. So really, 7/10 take away 2/100ths is 68/100ths. But over here we've got it written as 5. So that doesn't, those two things, those two numbers are not equal. So this is not correct. So when it comes right down to it, the reason that you have to line up the decimal points is so that you line up your place values. Right now we've got the 10ths place lined up with the 100ths place, and then this 10ths place lined up with the 1s place, and this 10s place lined up with the 1s place. So our place values are all wonky, and that won't work for subtracting. So we line up the decimal points so that we line up our place values. That's the end of this lesson. Remember, like with any video lesson, you can always rewind, pause, stop it, look at what you need to again. Make sure that you're learning and that you're meeting those goals that we set at the beginning. And if you haven't done that yet, go back and watch the video again. Alright, see you in class.